Good evening, everyone. We're in the Public Arts Select Committee of Wednesday, December 6th. All from Squalum, Quees Toloktamak, classically Homish, Owayomayo. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. And really excited that we have a full, I think everybody's here.
Toby's
Oh, where's Toby? Oh, okay. Anne's here. But I want to, firstly, before we get into the agenda, I just want to thank everyone for coming. As you can see, we have a little gift from the district, just an appreciation of your participation, your giving back to your community and helping us further the vision of the town as we move forward and really trying to bring arts and culture into the fabric of our community. So this is a really important part of it, getting that built environment, getting that community experience, that public experience, just adding dimension to it, adding meaning, adding the social fabric to it. So thanks, everybody. On behalf of council and the district, just a small token of our appreciation and a little festive treats. And so just a little token of thanks.
I just want to return the thanks as well to you and to council for actually hosting this and calling us all together, both for our opportunity to have input on the arts, but also for the opportunity to sit with a bunch of other people who are in the arts community who don't necessarily have a chance other than this to actually meet and find out who's doing what in town. So dual purpose. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, and
I'll second that.
it's just the beginning. I feel like we're just starting to hit our stride.
Yeah.
We're just starting to get some funding that will actually create some real significant projects in the community going forward. So I thought we should probably go around the table just because there are a few new first-time attendees, and maybe I'll just start and then we'll go around and we'll finish with Suecia. I'm Patty, I'm the mayor, and I chair this committee.
Maciej Walentovich. I used to be in art and design education, and I'm going to talk about this actually today.
Good.
And I sat on design committee before, which was quite interesting, and I'm very happy to continue with that in some way.
Talk to you about.
My name is Meg Fellows, and the project that I'm working on, not here necessarily, is the Turtle Trail, which you may or may not have heard of. Have been interested in the arts for quite a long time, a number of years. And my passion in terms of the arts, of course, is music as opposed to the visual arts, which have to mix things up and add things to me. So that's who I am.
I'm Kiana Lee, and I'm a group of Tindy House.
My name is Adrian Blythe. I come here representing BIA, which is an organization representing the interests of what's going on downtown. I also own the Zephyr Cafe and Ground Up Climbing Center in town. And yeah, I've been on this board for a couple of years and I kind of like it.
Awesome.
I'm Sydney Lyons, and I'm the chair of the Squamish Arts Council, and I also like art.
Phew.
I'm Devin Guest. I'm the staff liaison for the Public Art Committee.
I'm Anne Leguadoc, visual artist here in town, and also associated with Emily Carr, University of Art and Design.
My name is Rachel Ann Farquharson, and I'm a practicing designer and architect, but also a curator. I lived in Vancouver BC for a number of years, and I represent today Vancouver Biennale, which our institution would love to have a presence here, continuing forward with a residency project with Quest. As well as any other ancillary projects through the town, incorporating with local artists and the Squamish Nation.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Heidi Burke. I'm relatively new to Squamish. I moved here in September 2015. I am a college instructor. I teach human resources, labor relations, business management. But I'm here because I have a passion for art, and I sometimes like to call myself a practicing artist in my spare time.
Cheers to me.
And so hopefully it'll continue. Unfortunately, as soon as I was selected to be a volunteer, my course schedule changed, and it happened to fall on the Wednesday. So now I've got a brief change, and so hopefully it'll continue.
And I'm Fran Solar. I'm a visual artist, textile artist, I guess, working with metal instead of traditional fabrics or fibers. And I've lived here for 27 years. So, what else? That's about it.
She's a fabulous artist.
Oh, well, yes.
I'm Catherine Atkinson, and I've lived here for about 11 years, and until October 12th, I was the arts editor at The Peak in Whistler, and my website for my new company called Arts Adventures, which went up this week, and
Congratulations.
yeah, and so we're launching in January. We had a big thing at Whistler, Tourism Whistler yesterday, and it went really good.
Awesome.
So, and some of the people here know about it really well, and some of them are involved in it, and I'm really excited about that.
Good for you.
So my ancestral name is Tsuesia, and I also carry Spakwas. My English name is Alice Gus. I come from the Squamish Nation. I was in education for 20 years. I worked in the downtown east side for 5 years, and I'm doing my business for about 10 years now. And I do drum making, woodweaving, cedar bark, traditional medicine, do a lot of opening of conferences and closing. I was on the Arts Council back in the day, but I got so busy with my business, I just had to respectfully leave. And I was part of our new logo. One of the volunteers of the many beautiful people that were volunteered their time for a while, and trying to get back into the wayfinding again, because I got an email from Christine, and I got to try to get back. I've just been so busy, but just want to thank you all for being here today, or tonight, and thank you, Patty.
And I better not think that's a cracker. Dog treat. I've been twisting Suesia's arm for a while now, so I'm really pleased. I know the committee has talked about the importance of honoring and making sure we're being appreciative and understanding and sensitive to the territory and the people who have lived here in time immemorial, and so we're really, really happy to have you on the committee, and she's just so fabulous as a person too. 2 Christmases ago, my gift to my family was an evening with Suesia, and we made drum making together, and she shared stories of her culture and her heritage and her parents and residential school, and it was a really powerful experience for my family. So, and that's the sharing that we need to that needs to happen in the community more, and that understanding, that appreciation. So thank you for being here. Fantastic. And thanks to everyone who's new to the committee and those that have been here from the beginning. So we do have an agenda, and this is a formal meeting, so I'll just look for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Meg, seconded by Fran. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have committee meeting minutes from November 8th. Hopefully people had a chance to peruse them. Looking for a motion to adopt the minutes. Moved by Adrian, seconded by Maciek. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Were there any errors or omissions? I didn't ask that. I don't see any business arising.
Question.
Yep.
I would like a brief chance to chat about the Mosaic project, which was discussed last. So
Why don't we just add it to roundtable? Yeah, we usually just sort
Okay.
of add things to roundtable.
Okay.
Okay, so Mosaic. Excellent. Any other business arising? Don't see any. So first off, we have show and tell. And we started this at the beginning of the committee just to sort of get people thinking about what public art is in different places and what art means to community. And we kind of got out of the habit of doing it for a little while, and so we're kind of trying to bring it back. So the idea is that at every meeting, someone else brings something from something they saw while traveling, or they saw on the internet, or an idea, or anything like that. So, Maciek, over to you.
Magic, would you like to
I
come?
used to be involved in the development of art and design program, and about 30 years ago I developed one which sort of suits me the best. So I was teaching art history in that program, sort of creative processes and casting, etc. It was a 2-year program at the Vancouver Community College, and I worked there for 28 years. And each year we could apply for the time and money to do what was called professional development. So all you have to do is justify that whatever activities I would take, it will benefit the students. So after 4 of my application, they gave up on reading my long introduction, and I got 28 of those trips, once every year. So I managed to travel quite a bit with purpose of trying to figure out the meaning of art. And I came with the number of criteria or question, how should I approach my visits to places. So my first question was, how do I recognize something valuable? Because each of us would have a different criteria for that. So I came up with that with the faculty of memory, that if I remember something which I've seen, heard, saw some performance, and 10 years later I can describe them clearly, that means it was important for me. So faculty of memory is my sort of measuring stick. Then the next one would be to what degree public arts specifically is apropos to the place, time, and etc. And the last would be who pays for it. And that last part was probably my focus in most of my travels. And I came with all sorts of surprises, starting from 1972, going to New York, trying to see who pays for art and why. And anyway, 2 weeks ago I went to Chicago, and between the SOFA Chicago, which is a large conference, 3 days, I managed to run around and bedweather photograph public art. And we can go to the first slide. Probably the most important is Cloud Gate by Anish Kapoor, and it is the most photographed public art, they say, ever, and for good reason, because it's supposed to cost $6 million, but it costs 23 million in the end when it's finished. Mostly because underneath there's a railway, they have to reinforce the thicker stainless steel, polish, and etc. So the question was, how do we pay for it? Because obviously taxes would scream to pay $23 million for some people public art is useless, for some is absolutely essential. So there was no tax money being paid for that $23 million. So all sorts of businesses, individual chipped in, and now they're getting recovery. And recovery is that if you want to have a wedding, you pay $1,500 with the photographs of the bean. Toyota paid last year $800,000 for 1 day, and so this is how the money is being generated by having ownership of anything which you can profit from. And they say this is the most photographed public sculpture. So we can go to the next one.
So just a question, so who gets paid? Is there a foundation that owns it and then they get paid and they...
There's a foundation which originally paid for it. Sort of similar to Christo, who sells his work before it's being made. So I photographed this one because I thought that was very unusual, and if I would want to sell it, I would have to pay $800
Right.
without their permission. Okay. Oh, Anish Kapoor, by the way, came from India, and when he goes to the bank in London where he lives, they call him Sir, because he got knighted for his work. And next one would be Alexander Calder, who started sort of playing like a child, and eventually his playfulness paid. And I saw his work first time in Witness in 1971 in New York, and I thought that was a joke. That was someone making circles out of wires. What a fun. But I still remember, that means it was important.
Yeah.
And Whitney actually bought this piece. So this is his flamenco. Okay, and now the Eye by Tony Tassett was originally commissioned in Chicago by owners of hotel. It's a 3-story high, and a number of people asking him, what does it mean? And this is for him very important question, because he said it means nothing, and it means whatever it means to you. However, he pointed out there's lots of cameras around on the street, which looks very similar to that. Now it's in Houston, Chicago, and they raised the same question. Making sculpture became a little bit easier because most of the sculptors, furniture makers like Wendell Castle, would make a small model, and Wendell Castle said that he has 2 tools, which is very important. The hand tool is the pencil, and power tool is the robot, who just cuts the layers. So most of this work is made from small maquette, which actually Henry Moore started this trend. So also he has, I was watching interview, I Googled him, and he has interesting answers to the questions. So for example, he admires Andy Warhol, not for what he did, but what he said. So Andy Warhol often had those one-liners when they asked him, why did you do this work? And he said, I don't know, tomorrow I'll do something different. And or they would be asked, did you try anything Cubism, which was like a disease in the 60s? And I said, no. I don't know why, because it's so easy. So he's very good in it. Okay, so we can go to the next one. This is Magdalena Abakanowicz, who went to the same art school as I did 10 years before me. And all her teachers told her that she's rough, useless, she would never make it. And she donated the sculpture to the city of Chicago, which is worth $50 million. That's, donation often is more expensive than if you pay for it. And she has also a theory about the identity of crowd, and the lack of individuals or individuals in disguise and so on. So she started as a weaver.
But doesn't she also have, there's an installation
Yes,
of her
yes.
somewhere in Vancouver?
Yes, there's one by the station.
In North Vancouver.
Right.
Yeah, right there.
The Biennale Commission.
Yes.
Oh, yes, that's very
Yeah.
similar to
Yes.
this. Yeah.
They're identical. They're
Oh,
the same artist.
Yeah, I see.
So next one. The Picasso, they have to put Picasso. And Picasso, I was in New York when Picasso died, and someone said, the king is dead, let's learn the king. Let's learn with the king. And the next king was, we're not sure, we thought maybe Rauschenberg. Definitely at that time he was important. For some reason the Picasso doesn't have the same impact, and the reason I don't think has such an impact on me that I forget about it. So we can go to the next one. This is Dubuffet, and again he has certain formulas, but what is interesting about this specific one is to some degree is interactive. You can go inside, like many other sculptors, and see from inside out. So that's that. Now the one mirror, I don't think it's very well represented here. In Barcelona, they have fabulous Joan Miró museum, was the building is built specifically to hold his art, and I was really taken. After he came from Japan, he was sort of zen, and he was making huge burn canvases where General Franco was in power and so on. So he was responding to political situation where here someone didn't like this so much, they splashed this with the red paint. They have to resurface whole thing. So people do have a strong reaction to art, especially if they don't like it. So now she's doing interesting, really interesting work. This is in Millennium Park, and this all made out of old car tires using a screwdriver and frame and stainless steel screws. And what I like the most about that, if we go further, this one has an impact, but this is my favorite. This is absolutely my favorite, because I always felt that if you would photograph yourself against the sculpture, that means to some degree you take this with you, you promote the work outside, and I'm advocating frames for anything. And this is very easy to construct it, and that's what I like about that too. No high tech. Especially this guy was very good. He was just perfect.
Yeah.
He couldn't leave them.
His hair was the exact same.
Now they have a festival which is called Cow Parade in Chicago, and so similar to how we pay the Orca whales, and eventually someone goes and gets money for it. So this is similar deal that the corporations and places are placing all those cows who can go to the next cow, and someone pays for it. I saw one in a private house in Chicago, in a yard, and it's stunning.
Awesome.
Now, Jaume Plensa is from Barcelona. He's Catalan, and when I saw an interview with him, I've invited a bunch of people, and I have to show them that interview because I was really taken by his quiet wisdom. So he was commissioned in England. We can go to the next one. Oh no, this is still Jaume Plensa, and it's a crown fountain in Chicago, which changes the faces of people in Chicago. It's enormous, two facing each other. And in summer, we can go to the next one. Someone asked me to follow. In the summer, it becomes a fountain which spits sort of occasionally through the mouth, and people, Chicago is very hot in summer, but I wouldn't advocate this in Chicago in winter. Now, this is Jaume Plensa in St. Helens in England, where they closed the coal mine, and miners wanted to have something which would sort of elevate them because they fell down a little bit. So he originally talked to them and came with the idea of lantern because there's no light in the mine and etc. And this group of miners told him that they don't want to look back, they want to look into the future. So he did this, this is enormous. Again, the technique is fabulous, and became a meeting place in a place which is sort of out of the way, but became a destination. Originally, he wanted to have the lid from inside because it's made from some kind of dolomite crystals which transmits light and etc. But Minister of Highway disagreed, and they only lit from the outside. And again, question who paid for it? BBC4. Part of, like, we have the 1% of developers. BBC4 they devote certain amount of money for what they call big art. And big art, that means, one person cannot pay for it. So he was part of that big art. And if you see next slide being viewed from the town,
Yes.
it is towering, and
It's
it's,
colossus.
yes, and it's sort of uplifting.
Yeah.
Drama
Nice
Plaza,
things about things like that.
when in that interview, he talks about poetry, that what art should be first should leave some gaps in between, allows you to fit into it. So this poetry is definitely something which he's practicing. So next one. This is in Calgary, also Plenza. And again, you can go inside and see a completely different perspective of the Calgary architecture than seeing this from the outside. So we can go for next. That's from the inside.
Wow, that's very cool.
And it's all computerized, which is our new tool, new toy, and I truly enjoy that we have that tool. Okay. Now this is Andorra, which is tiny state country with northern Spain, sort of almost by the French border. And all the rich people are parking their money. Everyone there's accountants. And so he had number of clients buying his sculpture, and he wanted to do something for the country of Andorra. So he put those 7 poets, because he said the poets are not only living on earth, but also they fly above. They're above. And those are all lit, 7 of them. So the next one would show us different perspective of it. It's an interesting place, that Andorra. So,
What is the material for the?
this is form of fiberglass with some
Resin.
Yeah, resin.
Okay.
But he said it's very durable. But at the same time, he said no sculpture should last forever. He smoked. Okay. Now, Antoni Gormley is sort of English sculptor who does all sorts of change almost the meaning of sculpture of the time. So they commissioned him to do this Northern Angel, and again, who paid for it is very interesting. The railways in England were privatized, and this is right next to between London and Glasgow train. So they said that hundreds of people are seeing this a second, because the train just goes by. Also nearby is a highway, but again it cannot be lit at night because of the traffic.
Can I interject something for a second? Because there was an Anish Kapoor sculpture, I think in Leeds in the north, sort of about 20 years ago, and it was polished glass. And it was like a bowl shape kind of facing up into the heavens. And apparently it was blinding pilots as they were coming into the local international airport. So that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah,
I was wondering about the head as well, because that's
Yes,
really big.
yes,
If it
yes,
was
yes.
lit on the top for safety reasons.
50 feet.
Yeah, there probably is some. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one slide which is really controversial from the point of view of impact on many things.
Really
So this is how they pay for it, and it's humongous. It's huge. It's visible from long distance.
So you said Virgin Plane, or like whatever train company paid for it?
Yeah.
Well, the partly was paid by the iron metal workers.
Oh.
So, which is sort of interesting, and partly iron metal workers paid for Anish Kapoor in London Olympics sculpture, the Red Tower. So next one is the Mimo Palladino. I was staying in Florence for a month, and I saw the shining lights above whenever I was buying wine and tomatoes and stuff. That light. And one day I decided to walk up the hill, And in El Belvedere, which used to belong to the wealthy Italian family, there was a show of sculptures of Mimo Palladino, and this is what I saw from distance. Right? That shiny was the head of the horse, which is gold-plated, and really the whole show made such an impact on me that I felt for that reason was worth putting up with lineups to the Uffizi Museum. So next one. This is his moving show, which is a heap of salt with the cast iron horses, and it's sort of like those flamingos which are appearing in your lawn. Sort of changes towns, so it goes from Palermo to Milan. This one is in Milan. And he makes also sort of sculptures which you can buy for your garden, and mostly in marble. So that's Mimo Palladino. This is one of his sculptures. And extremely poetic and totally removed often from reality. The horses are sizes of dogs, and everything is totally out of whack, which is good. Isamu Noguchi, because he was this Japanese-American who didn't know if he's American or Japanese, he didn't know if he's craftsman or artist, but he made enormous contribution to public art. And we can go to the next one. Right, this is Black Sun in Seattle, which was commissioned by Mrs. Boeing. And so we know who paid for it. And it was Brazilian granite. You can see the Seattle Tower at the back. And there's a museum in New York of most of his work, and it was paid by some kind of organization which cherishes both American and Japanese heritage. Okay, that's often when I was going to the Venice Biennale, which is you're not choosing the artist, you're not choosing the art, you choose the artist. And always when I went to US was represented by typical American, like Louise Bourgeois, who speaks with such a heavy French accent that you don't believe that she lived for 60 years in New York. And this is Isamu Noguchi, and he made playground for children. That was probably his strength. So this is part of that playground. Okay.
Magic, how many of these do we have? They're fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is some of his troubles in Japan, that he made a proposal for building in Hiroshima for the war memorial, and he was rejected for being American. So he went to a small village when they have this festival where put the lanterns down the river with candles, and they were so good that he commissioned them to do some more and start selling them in the States. And now they're selling them in IKEA. Okay? And this is the production of those lanterns. Some of them were really large. He was very successful with that project, and everyone told him that he's going to lose his shirt. So I don't believe. That's the museum in New York. Okay. Louise Bourgeois again. She grew up in Choisy, and she had issue with her parents, and all her work. Can we go to the work? Next one. All her issues was about the betrayal by her parents. And since they were fixing tapestries, and Athena said that the best weaver is the spider, she turned her mother into a spider. So there is a meaning to it.
Tricoteuse, she called her. Yeah.
Okay. That's Louise Bourgeois. She died at age 100, and
years ago.
recently in New York, and artists were fearing her. Okay. Sergio Busmante is okay. We can go to the next one. He's in Puerto Vallarta, and there is a whole walkway with his sculpture. And I went to buy myself ice cream, and I woke and I was staring at the sculpture. I realized that ice cream is gone. I was so taken by it because they're really haunting. Okay. Now she's making. Originally, she was commissioned in by Portuguese town of Porto to make something important in art. So she made this. Actually, the next slide is that one. This one. So she made this sort of fisherman's net. Some kind of a sea creature. The problem was that the birds were being caught in it, so she was sued several times for the fact they couldn't resolve the problem. But this is still probably the most interesting sculpture in Portugal. Public art. Okay. Now Lawrence Angel, he's sort of. Seemingly you don't read this, but he's conceptual artist. The idea behind it is great, especially when you hear the title. This is Convention Center in Denver, Colorado, and they live surrounded by mountains. There are some bears there. And so he thought, what happens in Convention Center? What is so important? People exchange ideas, they're connecting, they talk to each other. So the title of the sculpture, which is 3-story high, is I see what you mean. That's the title. Okay, next one. That's from inside. It's huge. Now this is airport in Sacramento, and he had idea that when we're waiting for luggage, this is the moment where we get truly excited, and finally we got this. We're leaping forwards to get our luggage. And at first I couldn't get this bunny, but when I left the airport, those bunnies are everywhere. They're typical for that part of California. They're sticking noses from the ground. This is Vancouver Airport, and when I arrived now from Chicago, I was really taken by the sound, sort of surrounding the effect of the native art, and this is so welcoming, so soothing, so pleasant. So next one, and it's a visual, emotional feast. Add to it sound. It's really, you feel finally I'm home. So next one. Oh, this is Bill Reed. When I started the program, I was being asked to form advisory committee because the advisory committee has to justify what I do. And I asked Bill Reed if he would preside, and he agreed. So he sat with us for four years, which was fabulous. We also asked Jimmy Pattison to be head of the Museum of Craft, and he agreed. So you just go for the top and it works. So this is Bill Reed in Vancouver Aquarium. Also the main benefit that is Bill Reed was talking to students, and we have lots of students from various nations. So it was beneficial. In front of the aquarium. And this is probably the last slide,
It is your last slide.
Yes. So that's it. Thank you very much.
So we got our work cut out for us.
You like big stuff.
Yeah, I like
You
this
like
stuff,
big.
yes.
Thanks, Maciek, that was great.
Ideas, people.
That was great. So really appreciate that. looking for volunteers for next time. So, but we'll move on, because we do have Rachel here from Biennale.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll just frame this and then I'll pass it over to Rachel. So I guess in 2013 or 14, Biennale first came to council.
Yeah, 2014,
Yeah.
16 was the span.
Yeah, but I think they started to approach us in late 2013, and
That
we
makes
approved
sense,
the initial, we approved the funding in 2014. So it was previous to this term, actually. I think Council of the Day saw it as a real opportunity to leverage and launch the idea of art and public art in the community in quite a bold and big way.
Forgive me, might we patch my colleague Amar in? Is that possible?
Oh, yeah,
Sorry,
I don't want him to miss the intro.
I was wondering why this is in front of me.
Yeah, sorry.
This is the public art at the table.
Forgive me for the interruption. I just wanted to make sure that he would be able, and as we were talking, here will be the catalog for the Biennale from 2014 to 16. So you'll see some recognizable works that you've been down to Vancouver.
And there's the Squamish in there, obviously.
Yeah, and in Squamish as well, which I think is like sort of an essential component of our conversation tonight, is how to incorporate such things into.
Hello.
Hello, Amar.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to the Public Art Committee.
Hi, Mar. It's Patricia Heinzman here. So we have a really good full committee here today, and we just finished our first item, and so we're just moving on to Biennale and the agenda. And I was just talking a little bit about how Biennale came to Squamish in 2013, 2014, and I'll pass it over to Rachel in a second. Just to remind everyone, I think back in the day, I might get the numbers wrong, the initial amount that the district committed towards Biennale was about $40,000. We ended up with some additional ask. I think in the end we spent about $47,000. And Rachel might go over obviously some of the things that were done in Squamish, but that included residency programs at Quest and some large installations from very prominent international artists, as well as smaller works as well. As with art, it should and must and does provoke lots of discussion about who you are as a people, about why it's important and why people do or don't like art or see value or don't see value. And I know from my perspective, regardless of people didn't like the blue trees or not or some other things, it was a very valuable tool to elevate the conversation in Squamish. And we got, I think just we leveraged a lot of international press and attention from it as well. So I mean, there was sort of an economic spin side of it as well. And I think it really was sort of the foundational piece that sort of allowed us to get to a point where we actually had a public art committee and we actually start to see that value, and now we actually start to fund small token amounts, but we're getting there, but actually have an actual funding source every year to actually start to grow public art in the built environment in Squamish. So with that, maybe I'll pass it over to Rachel, and Amar, if you do want to chime in, just give me a little pss, pss, and I'll make sure we get to you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think Amar will speak to some of the specific pieces of work that are in this slideshow, but I think just by way of introduction, I'm quite new to Squamish. I've lived here for just over a year, and it's so wonderful to have this introduction to work from Chicago and other places. I have 2 degrees in art history, and so like a lot of this for me is very resonant, and it's impacted my life over and again, but I'm from a small town, and I can see how in inducting this kind of work, both the intelligence but the physical nature of the work and the interaction really can impact a community, which is why I ended up going to architecture, because as somebody who's interested in art but also is spatially aware and involved, I realized that it was an essential component not only for intellectual capacity, but for for children, for like every demographic, to have that concert with your surroundings. And so when I moved here and I first noticed that this beautiful day was here, I was so surprised because I didn't realize that Squamish had been a participant in such an amazing event. So So for me, that and my relationship with Quest, where I've been working with the teachers and tutoring and also teaching there, has been a really formidable thing for me, because I think that a lot of people come to this town for adventure and outdoor activity, but we have a good deal of purchase on intellectual and creative gravity, and I think that we shouldn't forget that. In addition to our hardwire for adventure, which I think they play with each other, With that, Amar, do you want to go through the slideshow, or should I just talk a little bit about the residency project?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with all the projects and programming that we did over the last Biennale. So just put together some images and just talk to them briefly. And yeah, if there's anyone has questions, just feel free to stop me or bring them up.
Okay. So we'll
So the
just go.
Biennale, our mandate is really about art in public spaces and the art as a platform for catalyst and community engagement and dialogue. So we try to situate large-scale public art installations across Metro Vancouver to connect communities and bring people together to celebrate diversity and really bringing artistic creativity from all around the world to our local communities. And we've been doing this now for 3 two-year exhibitions, and we're slightly different from traditional Biennale formats where firstly we work predominantly in public space, unlike other ones that are in galleries or museums. And secondly, our programming actually runs the course of the 2 years of the exhibition. So most other Biennales are for anywhere from 2 months to 4 months at the most. Ours actually has ongoing programming at different levels. So what we call the open air museum, if Ray's moving through the slides,
Yeah, I'm there.
is the large scale installations that are museum caliber, but we'd like to make them accessible to people where they live, work, play, and transit. So there's no intellectual boundaries, there's no economic boundaries of entry fees or gates. And the works are really outdoors where everybody can engage with them. So as Patricia was mentioning, with the previous Biennale, we had 3 large-scale installations as part of the Open Air Museum in Squamish. The first of the works was Untitled Wolf by Brazilian artist Vic Muniz, and that was quite a monumental artwork. I mean, it was fantastic to have Vic here. He was recently ranked as one of the top 10 contemporary artists of the 21st century by The Guardian in the UK, and so having him in Squamish was a real joy for us. And he really connected with the community. His project made sense because he was using local materials to capture this transitioning identity of the town, with the resources, with the creativity, with the indigenous community. And there's a lot of volunteer participation, and that's the way Vic really likes to work, is where he works along with people to realize his artworks. We also screened his 2010 Oscar-nominated documentary Wasteland, which really started as an artistic practice where he worked with scavengers in the largest landfill in Latin America, outside Rio de Janeiro. And we had a wonderful event at Totem Hall with the elders and Councillor Joshua Joseph welcoming Vic onto the indigenous lands. And so that was a strong connection that we built with ongoing projects as well. The other large-scale open-air museum artist was Hugo França, coincidentally another Brazilian, but works in a very different medium. And Hugo's been working for the last 30 years in the Brazilian forests, using large-scale roots and trees that are discarded by agricultural slash-and-burn techniques. And he recycles these materials that are considered waste or garbage by most people into sculptural furniture pieces. He spent 2 weeks in Squamish and 2 weeks in Vancouver, and in his time in Squamish he carved 7 sculptural benches, all of which have now been donated to various community groups in the district, which are legacies of the Biennale and of Hugo França's time there. And he uses the chainsaw, which is the same tool that actually destroys the forest, to recreate and reimagine the wood and the material. So it's very interesting in how he connected again with the Squamish landscape, and this work really brought to life a different creative aspect of how wood can be recycled and reused. There's a couple of slides with the photos as well, as you sort of see the process of finding and sourcing. And we had a lot of community partners and a lot of community support. And as Patricia mentioned, I mean, the district contributed $40-something to all of these projects. but really these projects ended up costing us somewhere around $200,000, both cash and in kind, from a variety of sources, from Biennale sponsors to local community partners. And especially with Ugo Franza, there was a lot of community support that made this project possible.
So if I can just interject here for a moment, something that I think is really inspiring and important in this conversation is the fact that, you know, I've never lived in a place like Squamish before. The trades community is, I think, oftentimes given a sort of a simplified ethos in the world, but actually I have met the most intelligent, smart, and creative people here than I've ever seen in my life. And so for an artist to come in and interact in a material aspect, in a public spectrum, in a familial and community-driven space with people who are experts in the manipulation of these materials on a large scale, I think it's just, I mean, it's a playground for them. It's the best platform for production. So, like, to support that, I think, would be a really magnificent thing.
Have you been to Loggers Day yet?
I did this summer. It was so much fun.
Amazing.
I'm a Highlander, so that kind of thing is like up my alley. Emma, you can go ahead. We're just moving through.
Go ahead, Emma.
Francis.
Oh, sure.
Up
So
to
yeah, with
Blue
Ugo
Trees.
Franza as well, we had an artist talk and the community got to learn about his practice. And it was quite an engaging evening over there. So with each of the artists as well, there is programming that happens around while they're in town or while the projects are being realized. So it's a continuous activation that tries to engage as many people as we can. The next artist, part of the Open Air Museum, was Konstantin Dimopoulos and the Blue Trees Project, which is this global project that's now been on 5 continents and over 15 cities. And really it speaks to an environmental activist, but also performative aspect where pigmenting the trees really highlights, you know, the trees and makes them stand out in the natural landscape. And for Kon, it's really in urban spaces is where it's key to have these conversations, because deforestation usually happens in remote areas which is far removed from our urban realities. And this is a way of sort of raising conscientiousness and global awareness. And it's quite a controversial work because there's a lot of people that don't really understand that the pigment he uses is actually a mineral. So it's a natural substance. And all it is cellulose as a binding agent that dissolves in water. So it's non-toxic, it's not a chemical, and it doesn't actually harm the tree. It just temporarily changes the color. And when Kon was here, he had 3 workshops with the Squamish Elementary School, with Coast Mountain Academy, and it was really great to see the younger generation, these students from grades 7 to 12, participate and engage with him in dialogue about deforestation and climate change. There's a few photos of the installation and Kon's talk.
And it's interesting because I ended up actually getting to know, when I moved here, a number of women who, their children are attending Coast Mountain Academy. And the counterposition of arts programming with, again, like sort of the understanding of the outdoors and athleticism, it really does wed nicely to each other. So I think that, you know, that kind of interaction and developing big ideas, which is one of the initiatives that I'm spearheading now in terms of incorporating an interdisciplinary education platform with the new BC curriculum. I think this is very much a part of that, is implementing these artists with the education system so that students are not only getting their physical education and their scientific education and their language arts, but also seeing how there's a bridge, there's a liaison between them all. So now we're at Amazing Laughter, Amar.
Yeah, so just talking about with Squamish and sort of the next Biennale, which we're just preparing currently, which is 2018 to 2020, we would love to see a large-scale permanent work in Squamish. You know, if that's something that that the Public Art Committee would like to discuss and think about as well. And these are just some of the images of permanent large-scale works that we've been able to realize in Metro Vancouver over the course of the last 2-3 biennales. So there's a range of different works, and I mean, each one comes at a different price, but really it comes down to the fact that all of these works engage communities and it transforms the space. It really creates a sense of identity for a location. So Amazing Laughter in the West End was sort of one of these key works that's really defined a place. And for Vancouver, actually, for the entire city, you know, they use it in advertising and marketing, and internationally, every tourist that comes here goes down there and gets their picture taken. This last exhibition, we worked with the city of New Westminster as well, and there's 4 giant 40-foot shipping containers down on the pier at Westminster Pier Park in the shape of a W. And for New Westminster, this permanent work speaks to their transitioning identity with all the shipping containers and the shipping traffic along their port. And their industrial waterfront is now transitioning more into a residential and an urban community. So this work at this precarious balance talks with the past and the present, and it can be seen from the 4 bridges across the Fraser River. So it really is an iconic landmark that's now distinguished New Westminster. And there's lots of photos. Everyone loves going out there to take their selfie as well, which is really interesting. The Giants on Granville Island, which is at Ocean Concrete, the cement silos. That was another Brazilian twin brothers, Os Gêmeos, who we worked with. And originally our agreement with the concrete company, because they are a private space, was that we'd keep the work up for 2 years, and then we'd have this conversation whether they'd like to keep it or not. They weren't sure heading into this because they'd never done anything artistic or they'd never engaged with the arts before, even though they've been on Granville Island for over 50 years. That's hard to imagine. But they were blown away by the amount of support and positive response that they got. They said there's no way that we're actually taking this work out. And so now that's a legacy of the previous exhibition as well. And it just shows the sort of range of spaces and ideas and mediums that we work in to bring artists in. As Ray was mentioning earlier as well, Big Ideas is our education program, which is in 125 schools in 11 school districts. And the idea is that the art is really the inspiration point for conversations that are cross-curricular and interdisciplinary, and that can also be scaled for grades K through 12. And what we do essentially is we bring artists in residence into the classrooms to work with the teachers on their subject areas. And we complement the curriculum by bringing in an arts approach and engagement with our installations and other public art exhibitions.
And I think something that's really valuable about the Big Ideas education program is, like I said, it's interdisciplinary and it's cross-disciplinary. So the idea isn't that, you know, you're teaching art to students who are taking an art class or science to, but they're all wedded. I mean, as languages, they developed together and they should be taught together. So you gain an understanding of science because of the geometry, which will lend your understanding to architecture or spatial awareness, and then thereafter material properties, which you know you need to know about wood and the cellular properties, but then you know how to carve it, and so it's just everything's intermingled in a way. And if you start that kind of thing as an imaginative program young, then it's kind of, I mean, I think that's a really neat idea, and the artists are really devoted to participating with us.
So I just want to, just cognizant of time, so I
Yes,
just want to make sure
of course.
we're moving on.
Yeah.
The next thing is the residency program that we had 35 artists from 23 different countries over the 2 years. 11 of those artists were in Squamish through our partnership with Quest University. We had them in groups for 4 to 6 weeks during the summer between May to August in both years. And our residency team the last time around was really inspired by Martin Luther King's speech, "If I Have a Dream." And we really wanted to bring together the next generation of talented emerging artists aged 22 to 38 from different countries and artistic backgrounds to live and work together. And the inspiration for the residency program is that these artists spend anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks in the community, and they develop their project by engaging with different groups in the community and working together with each other. So we had an artist from India, Shweta Batad, and she was literally inspired by Martin Luther King's speech. So in her time in Squamish, she carved these wooden letters, "I have a dream," and the holes in them are actually for small TV slots or video screens, wherein she got 32 different artists and farmers from around the world to participate in this project, to plant their gardens spelling out "I have a dream" in their own language. She comes from India, where there's over 100,000 farmer suicides in the last decade because of climate change, pesticide use, a whole range of environmental issues, and that's what she really wanted to highlight, is dependence and reliance on agriculture for sustainability. So she wanted to open this up to the entire world, and through our online platform, she engaged with people from 32 countries to plant their own gardens and harvest their produce and have this celebration and conversation about the environment. So it's an example of how something small started out in Squamish has sort of gone across the world. The next artist was Hassan Hujari from Bahrain, and he's a sound music artist. So he held a couple of workshops at the public library, and he published this book, The Squamish Working Papers, a copy of which is actually at the library, about his time and experience in Squamish that led his music practice to sort of expand in different directions. We had two American artists, Chris Landau and Miguel Horn, who created this canoe with the contour of the Salish
Mark,
Sea.
just hold on a sec, we have a question here. Hold on
Sorry,
two seconds.
sorry, I just wanted to add that Hassan now has a major installation associated with the Winter Olympic Cultural Olympiad right now. And so incredible piece of work. And he was here working in our own community, and now he's on an international scale. So it's just goes to show.
Yeah, there's quite a few of those young intern artists that have started to make a real name for them in the art world, themselves in the art world.
And that's a really good point, because I think that the impetus, part of the impetus for this residency is, we're also developing a student biennale, but the impetus is to identify artists who need that springboard, or for whom we can provide a springboard into a national, a transnational, and an international platform, with the idea also of understanding that they developed this kernel and this sort of idea for themselves here in Squamish. You know, like this is the playground for their generation and their gestation of their ideas. I think that's really why we're hopeful to have support for a residency of some sort.
Okay, Hassan, you can keep going, thanks.
So Chris and Miguel, again, they're reflecting on this idea of the Salish Sea, that's this basin that connects the U.S. with Canada and up and down the coast. So they spend a lot of time again with some of the young canoe clubs in the Squamish Nation. They engage with them in this entire process for their project.
So this one's at
Samakshi Singh, another Indian artist.
this one's at the Adventure Center, as you know, and you might have looked at the canoe, and the actual topography is the Salish Sea, if you're wondering. In the circle in the canoe is actually the whole Salish Sea geography. And anyway, go on, sorry.
No worries. And so with Samakshi, her project was, she's also a yoga practitioner other than being an artist, and so she recorded 108 breaths, and she created this video-based projection work that's called Breath Song, and she got each participant to record a statement or a word that reflects breath for them personally, and she composed that into a poem that then got projected onto this plexiglass panel in front of the chief. And the video of this work is actually online now, so it's sort of a legacy project in that sense, where people can still watch the video and engage with her work.
One of my breaths in there. One of my words.
Yeah.
I can't remember what word I did though. Sorry, go on.
Two other Indian artists as well, Pallavi Paul and Sahej Rahal. They created a film. It's sort of this sci-fi, post-apocalyptic movie using the Squamish landscape, and they recorded all of this content, created their sculptural works in the landscape, and they edited it once they went back home to India. This film as well is available online for those of you that are interested to watch it. And Sahej's career has really taken off. I mean, he's been invited to 3 other biennales since his participation in 2014 in Squamish. And yeah, we were talking with him recently, and he said he's booked out for the next 2 years with projects in in the UK, in India, and in Europe as well. So another example of how these artists sort of, it really provides this platform for them. In 2015, we had 4 artists that participated, one of whom was Kristen McIver, an Australian artist. She created the solar-powered neon sign, This Beautiful Day. And her inspiration, I mean, she works predominantly text-based and neon practice, but while she was here, again, through Alice Gus and other members and elders in the Squamish Nation, she participated in a lot of events and activities, and she was inspired by the Squamish language itself. And so This Beautiful Day really recognizes this greeting, this welcoming that's pronounced at the start of every event and celebration.
Alice is on the Public Art Committee. She's sitting right beside me.
Hey!
Hello.
Okay.
Then there's Tamam Azam from Syria, and again, an artist who has a politically challenged past where he had to flee his country and leave his studio behind, so he had to move his practice from painting to digital work. And the residency in Squamish gave him this opportunity to explore three-dimensional sculptural work. And the suitcase, again, to him, represents this precarious balance where he's forced to leave his home or his newfound home at any point because of political asylum and uncertainty. And Tamam has since gone on as well to host a number of exhibitions internationally in San Francisco, in the UK, and in Europe. And he actually lives now just outside Berlin. He's moved. Ratin Burman from India, he created these pop-up installations in different spaces across Squamish because he was sort of inspired by the informal landscapes of India and how in Canada everything is formally planned and public space is well documented, but he wanted to create this unexpected experience that was transient. One of our Canadian artists to participate in the Squamish residency was Jonathan Luckers, who actually moved to Squamish subsequently after his residency and lived there for over a year. He created these 3 photo-based panels, and he again, as a photography artist, photography-based practice, he's used to working indoors, but this was the first time we challenged him to take his practice into a public space. And so he created these panels that were installed at the Sea to Sky gondola for over a year, and he held workshops with darkroom photography for Quest University students, and he expanded sort of his way of playing with light in public space. And I believe that's sort of a summary of all of the residencies and the open air projects. So I think what's key for us in terms of what we see the future for Squamish and the Biennale to collaborate together is definitely through the residencies, where we'd like to have 4 artists per year for every year of the Biennale, so over the next 2 years. And we're currently working through an agreement with Quest University where we'd host our artists at Quest. That provides them this natural platform to live and work out of the community and then engage with different groups across town while they're here over the summertime.
So, sorry to interject, Patricia. So the ask, I guess, for us, I mean, you know, we've talked about money and monies and where they come from and everything. If the residency per artist is $15,000, we would support through grants and donorship 2/3 of it, and would hope for something like 1/3, which would be $5,000 per artist, and so 4 artists per year. This would span the summer months when the students are off doing whatever they're doing because they're not at school. They would be hosted at the university with LEC, and then what I would hope to do is liaise with, for example, the artists and the tradesfolk in town to harness in the best way the local potential that we have here in terms of materials, culture, the narrative that we're hoping to help them understand and that they can take away. Then they'll take that away and go off and bring Squamish to the rest of the world, basically.
Yeah, and I know that you're talking with some patrons out there about how to actually get larger installations, and I think that's the way the city of Vancouver does it. Is most of the funding for Biennale installations are through corporations, corporate donations, art enthusiasts, and that's how those monies are raised. So I think we're where you're looking for some support is in the residency program
Mhm.
side of things.
Yes,
So,
exactly,
yeah.
that's right.
Awesome. Any questions for Rachel or Amar or anybody?
When does it start in 2018? January or?
I think that's still tentative, MR, we don't have a
Kickoff date?
specific start date.
So the Biennale itself would sort of launch in June of 2018.
But the
And for the
residency.
residencies, we're looking at this point, June, July,
Yeah,
August.
June, July, August, yeah. So
And
it'll be
they're
the summer
8
months,
weeks.
so June, July, August, yeah.
Meg?
I'm just wondering how many, and the trades folks, the local people kind of thing, and how many local artists were actually involved in the program?
Amar, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, sure. For each of the projects, we had a whole range of local artists and tradespeople involved. I mean, starting up from Vic Muniz's project, where it was really all of the materials, the logs, the lumber, the rocks. Hugo Franza as well. We had a lot of people in the forestry industry engaged with him, you know, with chainsaws, with equipment, with carving
And
techniques.
I don't know if you saw it, were you around when the wolf was being done? Like, there was a couple, I was certainly one of them, a couple dozen people every night there. Yeah, that's right, Anne was one too, just placing the rocks and participating too. So there was quite a bit of participation in that one.
But that's the magic of an artist who is sculpturally and like spatially inclined, living in Squamish. In in a small block, you've got Triton, you've got your stone, you've got wood, you've got everybody that you would need, and all it takes is going and chatting with someone, and then interacting with them, and there are shops, and it's a perfect.
It's close and.
It's close, and so you don't have to travel far to find the materials that you need and the expertise if something's broken or if you need help. It's all there. Like that industrial park between Industrial Way and Commercial and Queensway and the highway.
So I think, there was lots of participation. I think maybe where Meg's trying to go at is how do we really get some of our young,
Yeah,
like Kiana and others really involved and
right.
giving them the opportunity through this type of thing
Mhm.
to be mentored, to have the exposure, to get the experience, and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth.
No, it's okay, they're always words of wisdom. But I'm also interested in, because what Biennale brings to the community is amazing organizational capacity,
Mhm.
right? And really one of the things that I would like to see developed in Squamish is organizational capacity
Okay.
for a lot of artists and a lot of tradespeople, because I think there's a lot here, and if the Biennale is bringing some of those skills, I
Yeah.
think that would be a huge addition to
Mhm.
Squamish. Not just for individual artists that have an opportunity to jump on board and showcase to the world, but how can some of the artists here start organizing in a different way?
Yeah, I think that those are both really great ideas, and I think that's our aim moving forward, is just working more closely. Again, the mentorship idea is really wonderful, where if we can connect people even before they start visiting, so that there's already this contact, there's already a relationship being built, so that when the artists are here, it's a natural continuation of that.
So we do need to move on in the agenda. Over the next probably 2 or 3 meetings, we're going to be drilling down on the budget for 2018. So we'll put the Biennale into the hopper and figure out how it fits in and how we might fund it and all that sort of stuff in the future.
Sure.
But yeah, go ahead, Timmy.
Just in terms of the ask, if you didn't receive the full ask, which sounds like about $20,000, is there scalability in your request?
So the ask would actually be $5,000 per artist, and as a third of the $15,000 that each artist.
So if there's 4 artists a year, it'd be 20.
Yeah, for them, sorry,
Just right.
yeah.
So total. So is there, for example, if the committee decided they wanted to support in some capacity, is it an all or nothing ask, or could it be?
Or could we, in theory, do 10 and support 2 artists? Just because we don't have unlimited funds in this.
Right, of course. Yeah, no, Anwar, do you wanna speak to that?
I didn't quite catch that. I just got the last part about can we do 10?
Sydney was asking if the commitment was scalable, so if the committee doesn't have $20,000 to put towards this project, if we put 10 and made sure we could fund 2 students, is it scalable in that sense?
I mean, it is, but in our experience, the impact really comes with a group of 4. You know, having 4 of them creates that critical mass. So I mean, it's obviously scalable where, you know, it's 1 to 4, but really, our idea of a group residency, again, is very different from most other residencies where you have a singular artist working in isolation, and that doesn't have that deeper, more lasting impact in the community.
Okay.
Whereas with 4, these artists build relationships amongst themselves, but also with the community, and there's critical mass, essentially.
Yeah.
I just wanted to interject. My name's Catherine. I was the arts editor at the Peak news magazine in Whistler when Kirsten and is it Tazan? When they were here, when the group of 4 were here, and so they all lived in the same place. They all shared ideas with each other and bounced them off of each other and helped each other get the materials, and they worked. It was very collaborative. It was really interesting for me as an outsider to come in and talk to them.
I think it is really valuable to have that sort of concert of artists together. And oftentimes when I've written recommendation letters for artists who are applying to residencies, one of the questions that at first I was surprised, but it came up over and again was, you know, how do they work and live with other artists? Because the idea is that it's actually supposed to be a community, a small sort of hub of artistic production. So I think that the four really, like, we would like to support having that many artists together to be in concert.
Okay. Awesome. We have to move on the agenda, but really appreciate both Rachel and Amar joining us.
Thank you for having us.
At least virtually, Amar.
No, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to these discussions.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to hang up now. Bye. Thanks, Rachel.
I'm sorry, I do have to excuse myself. I'm just hosting a dinner at the Zephyr. It was supposed to be at 8 o'clock, but
Good for
thank
you.
you so much, and I apologize for running away.
That's okay. You just came for the food.
I just came for the cake.
The present.
And the presents. Thank you.
Major projects discussion. So, do you have a slide for this, or do you have a budget number somewhere?
No, I can't put a budget number up.
So, I think we talked about this at the last meeting a little bit in terms of. There we go. But we, where's the? So every year we get about 50 grand a year. We've been doing the committee for 3 years. And the first year the committee determined, just for new people, that we would put 25 grand a year into sort of a major project fund. And so I think we're up to 50,000 in that one right now-ish. And with this year's 2018's monies, and if we take another 25 grand, we'll have about 75 grand. And the intention when we set this up, and I'll look for original committee members to make sure I get this right, was to do something of a significant type of public art project. We hadn't defined what that was, but we wanted, you know, for our community, it would be a significant investment. We can decide to move forward on a big project next year, or if we think, you know, we still want to grow that fund, we can put it off for another year. It didn't have to be one project, it could be a couple smaller ones or one big large one, but fundamentally, so there's this big fund, project fund out there. One of the things the committee has talked about is, and I'm really glad that Soasia is here, is that we've had some talk about truth and reconciliation, and how do we use art to help move that dialogue forward in the community in a meaningful way. So we, you know, I think we struggle with it because we want it to be an authentic conversation, and so it's great having Soasia here, and so we do all these things with the cultural sensitivity that is needed. So, but that's another piece, is that we may decide, hey, maybe we want to do a fairly significant. And for those of you who don't know, Clark and Rick Harry is Alice's brother, who's a fairly significant Squamish Nation artist. And you've seen his fairly significant, he's pretty big these days. Again, he's still pretty humble most of the time, right? So anyway, so that could be something also that the committee contemplates for the new year, is maybe doing something to really honor Truth and Reconciliation and move that forward in the community. So that's another big piece. Yeah, Meg?
Can I just add something to that? Suecia, I'm just wondering, the book that the elders have, you know, that was after the elders went and talked to the school kids, and do you remember the book that they did arts, drawing, and poetry and that kind of stuff?
At Squamish Elementary.
At Squamish Elementary.
That was a good one. That's through Stacy Nunn.
Would you mind, I still haven't got to the library to see if there's a copy there, but I would love to share it with the group here.
Maybe we'll try to bring it to the next meeting.
The eyes of children, you know, as they heard the stories and how they interpret it, I think it's really powerful, and I would love to see some of that work used somehow in whatever we decide ultimately to have, you know, as some kind of way of honoring.
And it was hard.
Reconciliation.
It's hard to get my mom to cry. And my mom cried when all the grade 6 and 7s of the day, they had the grade 7 teacher invited elders into their school, and they had a circle, and every single kid wanted to ask my mom, as an example, as one of the residential school products, and say, you know, how did you feel being in residential school? Whatever question that they wanted, they asked. Then after they did the talking circle, and then after Stacy got them to, like what she's talking about, they wrote it down. They wrote it down in a poem. Oh my God, my mom, she just, you know, just like when my nephew, he lives in Chilliwack area. He married a Stovo lady, and they're very, very, very culturally strong. And he's a longhouse, he's a Sion. And another song came to him, so he had to do the work. So he had to pay a whole bunch of community, the men in the community, he had to pay them. You got to feed them, you got to do this, you got to do that. And so, because he's asking them to help him sing the song. Because when it comes to the time that he wants to let the whole community know that this is a song that came to me. So there's a lot of work that has to go behind it. And he says, oh, I want Brad, he calls my mom Granny. He goes, I would love for, you know, Granny to come. And I says, well, you know what, enough. I says, 1, it's cold. 2, I says, it's far. And then he goes, well, I'll make sure he got up 7 o'clock that morning to start the fire in the longhouse. So by the time we got there 7 o'clock at night, it was nice and toasty and warm. He wanted to make sure my mom was comfortable. And I forget what my point is. It's a good point though. Oh yeah.
It was sort of root of the.
Oh yeah, so when we were in the longhouse, and my mom says, you know what, daughter? And I go, what? She goes, right across the highway. That's where she was confined in a hospital for 3 years because she got TB when she was in residential school. So she had to be bedridden for well over 2 years, and then she had to do rehab over a year. So by the time she was 16 years old or 17, a doctor says, Gwen, you can go home now. And my mom cried. She goes, I don't have a home. Because she lived in residential school all her life. And her dad went to residential school, but he was a hunter and a fisher. So he was always out commercial fishing, or he was always out hunting. And then so he says, okay, Gwen, he goes, I'll let you work part-time at the hospital. So my mom worked there. She was happy. And then when the hospital burnt down, and she goes, oh, now where am I going to go? But she came here to Squam. She met my dad, and we got married. Had 7 kids.
But I think what's interesting about that, to me, the book, was those stories when they were told to kids, you know, from all around, and then that was interpreted in poetry, how the kids felt. and imagine they would feel if they were in that circumstance. And I would love to see on tablets, I mean, I envision something almost like our monument to the war dead, you know, so that we actually have a carving, even a couple of those poems, so that kids can understand what did that mean, and so that it's a real marker. And
That's
it's
great that
coming
you mentioned
together,
that,
you know, of the communities is the way I would love to see it. So anyway.
When was that book made?
She's in grade 11, she's in grade 11 now, and she did it when she was in grade 6 or 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not that old, yeah. But I think it's very powerful. So if you could bring that,
Yeah.
or,
I'll
is there
bring
one in the library, do you know?
I
Or is
don't
it
know.
just,
I'll have to talk to
Yeah,
Stacy.
let's take that offline and we can bring it back, but, so I just wanted to get, the committee's feeling about, if they have any thoughts about where they'd like to go with this. Obviously, we usually go through some sort of competition. We don't have to go through competition, we can commission if we want. But, any thoughts from the committee about where we wanna go with this? We wanna go with one big project, or do you wanna start with a reconciliation project for a certain amount of money and then build on that? Totally up to the committee for discussion. Any thoughts?
Well, I've seen public art in Spain, where the cage part of the piazza was the sort of like chain link cage. And inside there was black and white photographs laminated, so that you take the weather, where you can go in cage and see how Hungarian police treats Syrian refugees. And it was such an impact, such an incredible public art, which is for the time being. It's an installation for a length of time. And I sort of envision poetry being presented in such way for general public. So everyone has access anytime, but the same, there is this impact of, to some degree, being sort of confronted with it.
So I think whatever we decide to do in terms of the magnitude or the size of the project, it's really important how we articulate our expectation or what we're trying to provoke. You don't want to over manipulate it and sort of say we want this or that, but you want to make sure that you're provoking the ideas and the thoughts and the imagination and the interactivity. So how we articulate, I think, is really important when we put out some sort of proposal call. So I don't think we want to get down into what we envision ourselves, but how, like, the other thing too is we have some money and maybe we can leverage it with some larger donors out there. So if we have, let's say, hypothetically, we say we're going to put 25 grand towards this, and maybe we go out and we find a corporate matcher of 25 grand and say, okay, we're at $50,000. We want something that speaks truth to titles and rights and reconciliation and that, and we craft something. That's one option. Obviously, we may want to honor other things too. Although the committee had sort of talked about truth and reconciliation sort of being that first big project that we do as a committee, or as public art. So just on that, like, I'm just trying to get us to what's, if we have some thoughts or we have some narrowing of what we want to do in terms of the big project. I'm going to go to Anne and then Sydney and then Meg.
I would encourage, or I would love to see a project that fosters deep reflection, sharing, and healing, obviously, in some way or another, and really to encourage us to explore what does this mean, and the time is of the essence.
Is 50,000? I know that they just did. Your brother just did a truth and reconciliation poll at the outdoor school, at the Checkma Center, and I think the budget was a really reasonable budget on that. Like, I think it was only $12,000, or anyway. I mean, how 20?
About 20, yeah.
Okay, but I'm saying we can get a fairly significant thing for a certain amount of money, but we don't we also want to really make sure we're paying what should be paid too. We don't want to cheap out at all. Yeah, Sydney, thanks.
I'd just be of the mind to, if we're gonna put our efforts towards a big project, to almost do another year of reserve and build up that fund. It sounds like, from Patrick's presentation, that if you wanna go on a grand scale, these things have a hefty price tag sometimes. So we might want to consider how much we're leveraging, and the more money we have to put in, the more we could probably leverage as well, so that's a consideration. And then just echoing the sentiments around the table about, having something that is forward about truth and reconciliation and touching on those components.
I know I'm not on the committee, but I was just wondering about partnerships in terms of leveraging kinds of things. Like I know that there's a new totem pole that was just erected about a month and a half ago, or maybe 2 months ago at UBC. That of course treated it's just gorgeous. I know. I honestly just sat on the grass and stared at it and was just like, what an amazing thing. And I actually was there while they were pulling it up, and I was wondering if is there any interest in kind of confluence between Squamish and and Vancouver, that conversation, is that a possibility? Is it an interest? Or is that not really, because you could find some good sponsorship and things I don't know.
I'm looking for the committee for input on that.
Well,
We'll take anybody's
I mean,
money. but-
thinking of Jim Hart, Jim Hart's screen is at the Audain Art Museum in Whistler.
That's true.
And I interviewed him when it was being put in, and he's extraordinary. We're talking about world-class artists.
Exactly.
Being, Bill Reed. He's to me, watching the scale of the carving that he does. And when I interviewed him about the screen at the Audain, he basically said, well, it was supposed to be that big, and then it was that big, and then we had shells added, and so the thing was that he had a mentor in Michael Audain, who was more than willing to see where he could go with it. And I don't know the story behind the pole. I haven't even seen it yet, other than I'm staring at it online, going, I've got to get to Vancouver. Because I just really like his work. And then a friend actually chanced upon him in Haida Gwaii carving while he was just working on a beach. And I don't know if he was working on the reconciliation pole, but it was the year before it went up. And I guess what I'm saying with that is that I think that his price tag is pretty high. I mean, I'm going to the Cheakamus Center on Saturday, and sorry, what's her name? Sarah.
David?
She was the person in charge of marketing and communications at the Audain too, so she might have an idea.
Well, I think.
I mean, I don't think it would be.
Yeah, I think certainly partnering with Vancouver to bring something spectacular. I do think it's really important that whatever Truth and Reconciliation titles and rights entity that happens in Squamish has to be authentic to the nation that calls this place territory.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
But I was thinking of just on scale, because
Yeah.
it's such a big thing, and the piece at the Audain is just massive.
And the reason why I was thinking about that is because, of course, so Polygon Gallery, which is also a building that the Pat Cows built, and Audain Museum, which is one that, actually Squamish is uniquely positioned between two places that art is happening, and what we want to distinguish ourselves as uniquely and authentically Squamish, but it could still be a tie that binds in a way that could actually lend us leverage in that respect.
Yeah, so I think we're open to leveraging that.
I really want to see the local connection, the rooted connection in this community.
Yeah.
Not only between Squamish Nation, but between the rest of us who are living here too. And to me, that's hugely important. So as much as the object of art is the celebration that goes along with it, and the power of witnessing, and the power of experiencing the celebration and what goes along with that. I think that's just a huge part of reconciliation, is stepping into a different world, stepping into a different time, and actually understanding from the inside what does that look like? So it's not just an object here that people can go and take a photograph of, but it's something that belongs in the heart of the community. That's really, I think, where we want to go with it. And I have no problem saying, okay, we've got enough money, let's do this, but let's think about a design where do we add onto that, you know, at some point. You know, so that as more funds become, we can put another block that's got poetry here and a carving here and a something here, so that then we can do a circle around, I don't know, whatever the totem kind of thing is in the middle. I think that would be kind of a cool idea as well.
And I just want to maybe touch on what Sydney was talking about, do we wait a year and grow the fund a bit more? I feel there's a bit of a imperative to do something soon and, you know, get the ball rolling and get the conversation rolling. I don't want to put that off. But at the same time, maybe there's a portion of the funds that we use and we don't sort of do all the total reserve all at once. And we really do try to leverage it through other opportunities. And but leave some in there to continue to build the fund a little bit more. I'll go to Sydney and then Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a suggestion in terms of, you know, how big do you want to go with the price. There is a program through Canada Heritage called the Legacy Fund, building communities through arts and heritage, which fund 50% of projects to a maximum of $500,000. So this would fall under the requirement category for that grant project. Yeah, I don't know if the district is in terms of the eligible applicants, but I'm sure there's other connections, ways of doing it, but it's something to certainly consider.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, you know, having kind of patiently saved for a few years and half the budget and not deciding quite yet what that looks like and just having the conversation now. There is something also strategic in acting now, in the sense that you see what's happening in terms of the development and the money that is being invested into here, and people are making money out of it, and we talk about how developers are meant to be contributing to the beautification of the town and its growth. And I think that at this point, the committee will have been in existence for 3 years in the spring. Is it 3 years or 4 years? 3 years. And yeah, 3 years.
It'll be, we're into our third year right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's 2015 it started, or yeah. And so it's not a bad time to make a statement and also to say, look, this is what we want you involved with. This is a medium-sized project, like not $1 million piece by any stretch, but this is an important piece for us. And you guys are coming here and all these other people are coming here and we want to grow this.
The other
I'm just
part is
I want to go to Alice. Yeah.
elections coming too.
Yes.
No.
To be crass.
Yeah, we can be cross.
Suesa?
Yep. Oh, I'm getting emotional. So Hafton Squam, Ea tonight and Rachel Tuesdays. Hafton Squam, Chakwatim so Tita. It's good in my heart that you guys are all doing a good job. I really am honored to be part of this circle. It's just like I say, it's just part of the truth and reconciliation, and it hits here. And I thank you for honoring it. I thank you for listening. I thank you for taking a step forward. I thank you for showing the confidence and I don't know, I just overwhelmed of happiness, I guess. And I know we'll get through it, and I'm just glad it's happening. Thank you.
Thanks. So, what would you like to see? What do you think the elders would like to see in terms of how we move forward? How do you think, if we move forward with the reconciliation project this year, how would the nation be involved?
It'll be good to meet up with the elders.
Yeah.
And it'll be good to meet up with the elders and say, you know, what is your vision? What
Yeah.
do you see? What do you want? Like, because there's so many things that represent Squamish Nation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because one, we are the Salmon people, and two, we are the Cedar people. Because we lived off the fish all our life. We lived off the land. The cedar tree represents the tree of life because the cedar We utilize the cedar right from birth right till death. And so that tree is very sacred to us, so it can go, you know, it could be a balance of both, right? You know, like when we did Hausan, we did the two-headed sea serpent, because that represents the good and evil in each and every one of us. But at the same time, we have the two welcome figures, and one's the male, one's the female, because that represents the mom and dad in each and every one of us. And it's what it bears down is to balance, right?
So if we put together a bit of a proposal saying that we want to do this, and we would go to the elders, I'm just trying to think this out in my head, so we'd go to the elders and say, we want to honor this,
Yep.
we honor these territories, we want to honor the people who lived here, time immemorial. We're thinking of putting out a proposal call to bring in ideas and inspiration on this, and I think, and as I said, we could just simply commission an artist to do it, or we could go out and look for ideas and submissions. And then would you suggest that the committee's going to sort of deliberate, and maybe we go to the elders with, you know, we're looking for your blessing on this choice? That type, is that how you envision it? I know that's sort of how we did it with the branding and the.
Yeah, that's what we did with the branding, but I think this is totally different. I think
Okay.
it'll be best if we ask them what is their vision, in other words, we wouldn't just go around a table and what do you see? You know, every elder is gonna say something that represents, you know, their part of the history, you know, living here in this community, yeah. So even like myself, I talk about the cedar and I talk about the sand. Someone may say, oh, we're gonna talk about the canoe, right? Because that was our transportation. You know, I teach in education all the time, like I'm a cultural ambassador, and you know, I do it in a fun, teasing way, you know. I says, we had our limousines, we had our canoes, right?
It would be cool to do a sharing circle actually with the elders as a committee, if we could do that.
Would you suggest that as a committee we go and do that type of thing, or would you suggest a subcommittee? Like what would be, I don't know, or don't want to overwhelm them.
Yeah, I think they'll be overwhelmed. I know Uncle Bob will get overwhelmed.
Bob Baker?
Bob Baker, yeah.
I love Bob. So I think we're looking for you for absolute advice on
Yeah.
how we proceed with this.
So what I'll do, I'll talk to Mom and put it in the budget per year and just take it.
Is everyone comfortable with sort of the direction? We haven't really chosen the direction yet, but I think this is sort of been where the committee's been going for a little while, so. Yeah, and.
Sorry, I have something happened to me this week that has really made me reflect, and I'm just wondering if this work can also be an expression of our deep sorrow. And I go to school with a young man at Emily Carr, and he shared the story with me this week about his grandmother. He's from Mount Currie, and his grandmother shared the story with him about when she was pregnant as a young woman and needing medical attention and needing to come through Squamish. And so she traveled all the way from Mount Currie back in the day and had booked a hotel room in what I'm assuming was the only hotel in town at the time. And when she arrived, she was denied that room. And she was presented a chair in the lobby and told that this is where she could sleep.
This is a 9-month pregnant woman?
6 months pregnant. And so I'm listening very respectfully to this story, and I feel awful that this happened in the community that I live in. And, you know, I wanted to say sorry to him, to his grandmother, to what they experienced, you know, and so.
So apology
I
possibly
think
part of it?
I think our elders would say they want more of awareness and of who we are,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yes, in other words, we don't want pity,
Yep.
right? We don't want for you guys to forever feel sorry for us, right? It's you know, this is who we are, right? So I think more like the cultural perspective,
But I was cognizant, I want to wrap the meeting up by 9 o'clock, and we've had lots of great discussion and stuff, but we're running out of time a little bit. Meg?
Really briefly, I think hearing the stories and hearing the stories again and again and from different people is part of the medicine. Not saying sorry, saying how do we actually go forward from here? How can we work together? How can we learn some of the skills and some of the things that Squamish Nation or other people have to teach us? I honestly think that sorry is, I get it, but we need to just hear those stories. We need to hear them, and people need to say it again and again, you know, so that more and more people actually hear those stories, is really what it's about.
And perhaps it ends up becoming empathy, like you import what that might have felt like, and then from there,
Yeah,
it's
understanding.
it's an impetus to move forward.
And
Yeah.
art is one of the, is probably the only thing in the world that can actually be profound in that sense.
Yeah.
I do want to make sure, I know sometimes it's a little overwhelming to be new committee members, but I do want to make sure Heidi and Kiana have an opportunity to reflect on this. Does it sound like, from your guys' point of view, sort of a direction that you think is good? Yeah.
It's been easy.
Yeah.
You know, really, since it was really first mentioned.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe what we'll, you have a confused look.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
No, I
okay.
really appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah.
So maybe what I'll leave with the committee is, and it would be good to make a decision fairly early on the year, because it takes some time to get these things going, and if we really want to have it for the summertime, then we need to make the decision probably in January to move forward on, or not, or how we move forward, and then really make sure we're honoring and respecting the elders and the nations and how we move this forward. So think about if we take 50% or all of the monies or whatever that we have in the big project fund, and think about how we might leverage that to be more. If we do want to have an even more significant project, maybe there is Mr. O'Dane or some other patron of the arts. I know Jack Matthews, who was with the waterfront, the oceanfront project, is a big patron of the arts down.
Or not, what's his name, the house builder? I'll have to think about it.
And anyway, so let's think about those people who may want to honor the people and the lands and the traditions of the people whose territory we share and who generously share with us, and bring that to the committee with real sort of like, yeah, let's put X amount of money forward, we're gonna leverage it to do this, we're gonna come up with $200,000, whatever we think we can do, and we're gonna move forward and start to lay out a strategy on how we actually go to the elders, put forward a proposal, whatever that may look like, make sure we have the elders' blessing, and move it forward. Sydney, and then Meg.
Just in terms of timelines, if the grant, Canada Heritage Grant, was of interest to get 50% of the project costs, they usually have about a 3-month turnaround after your application, so
Right.
just taking that into consideration for scope.
February, March.
Well, and maybe it could, yeah, okay, Meg.
I have no problem with this as long as it's understood that we talk to the elders and we listen to what the elders say.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah,
foundational.
because that has to be, and I'm assuming that it'll dovetail and everything will work together.
Yeah, so maybe we'll leave Alice on her first meeting to go back and do a little homework. You can talk to Mom. And then we'll, in January, either go as a subcommittee or a committee, or figure out how many people and go to the elders to have the conversation.
Yep.
Or whatever Ma suggests. And then that might give us a little bit more foundation to so I may just, that sort of leads a little bit into the next one. The Public Art Committee is scheduled for January 3rd, the first Wednesday of the month. Our staff tend to not, Devin won't be working the week leading up to that. So the suggestion is, and I'm not going to be here, but the suggestion is to move it to the 10th, just because it's really too close to the whole Christmas season and hard for people. Is that all right with everybody? Okay. So ideally, we come back on the 10th with some thought. If you figured out, if we can go talk to the elders before January 10th, if it works out, then maybe we should do that. If not, we'll do it after January 10th, but
Yeah.
I think if we do want to leverage some grant funding, we may want to put the accelerator on a little bit. Devin, you got 3 minutes.
No pressure. At last meeting, there was just some conversation around the GIS mapping. I
Mhm.
see a few of you have been busy in
Good
it,
job.
so good work.
Meg, good
Good
job,
job.
Meg.
And so there was some confusion over
So just
where.
very quickly for the new members, actually, one of our first meetings, we had Dan Griffin, our GIS mapping person. What's GIS? Global Integrated Systems. Anyway, mapping, cool stuff. And anyway, a couple meetings ago, he brought forward a bit of a template for us to go out and start chronicle public art in the community and start planting this GIS map with pictures and stories about the artwork. And the committee was sort of tasked with going out and sourcing it, and taking a picture and putting on the map and adding some information. And Meg has been the star pupil on that front, but we're slowly getting some art added in there. Devin, do you have it? Do you actually have it on there or not?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not up on the screen. It's on my screen. And I don't know how to.
This whole system drives me crazy. Every meeting we have this, it's on this screen, but it's not on that screen.
Can I ask
Yeah,
you
go
a
ahead.
question to the interim?
Yeah.
I made a spelling mistake in Warren Brubaker, who also has taken material from logging operations and that kind of stuff and made benches, funky benches and all that kind of stuff. I spelled his name wrong. Oops. I can't edit it.
So here, this is why So I had to sit down with Dan the other day, and because this goes back to, there's a front end and a back end.
Yep.
And the reason why you can't edit the front end is because ideally, ultimately, this becomes
a public
So
site.
there's a back end, you have to go to the back
Exactly.
end to edit it.
Exactly.
Do I need a different link?
Yes.
Can you
And
send
I
me a
will, and I
different
will
link?
email it out to everyone after
Okay,
this meeting.
perfect. Okay.
And that solves that question.
Okay, so this is an ongoing project, so just we'll keep trying to slowly do this. I think ultimately we're gonna get to a point where we make it a Quest University student project. And they
Can I
continue.
make a suggestion of that? Because Quest, I don't get up there very often to take photographs, and you guys know the art that you've actually got around there. Wouldn't it be cool to just take some photographs and actually figure out how to go in and just load it in so that we could see what's up there? And maybe come and visit?
Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be great if some students sort of said, hey, this is a cool little thing, let's go around town and help.
Well, I'd like to start just.
Does
Quest.
everybody
Yeah.
know what the GIS map is?
Probably
So,
not.
because Suecia doesn't know what it is, but we're just looking at it.
I thought I just explained it, sorry. Someone want to explain it differently?
No.
Can I, just because I've got a question for Swaitsea as well. I've just moved out of Brackendale, so I went around to the Eagle Watch site and I took photographs of all the different art pieces and that kind of stuff there and loaded it up. What I didn't do is Quas is there as well. I know there's an information piece about Quas, the figure. I want to know what the protocol is for approaching Squamish Nation. So that I can take a photograph or you can take a photograph and load it up. Same kind of thing with the two-headed serpent. I would love to do that. That was the first time I was called as a witness, you know, so I'd like to do that, but I don't want to do that without understanding where you are coming from. I don't want to do that inappropriately. Can you help?
I think as long as you bring it forward to the elders and let them know.
Can I get it to you to get to the elders?
Yep.
Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah. So, so
I just
anyway,
did that
we do
because
have
that's
this is online map that we're planting with the public art, and so you click on a little button on the map, it brings up a picture of the art and a bit of an explanation. The idea is to just plenty the map and then ideally link it and make sure it's accessible to people and just helps collect the data and showcase the art, so a little piece.
It's a great idea. The piece about like Quest and involving Quest, like the students are voracious for art projects.
Cool,
And
they
things,
totally
they're
are.
so interesting, and the whole campus itself, like it's it's up on this hill or whatever, but the land is it's right. Yeah, like yeah, that connection. And the current artist in residence is doing some really interesting sculptural stuff, so I would imagine that something soon will be produced that could be
Awesome.
populated on that map. Cool.
So we're good with the GIS for now?
Yeah.
And then updates, the art walls and the maps, the
So-
hydro maps, the
Yeah.
wraps.
Yeah, so just quickly, the art wall locations, the existing ones assigned are the Manprom pedestrian underpass in Centennial Way and the corridor trail. 2 of those, it was determined last, should be removed and 2 new ones be put forward as the 2 have murals on them. So I'm putting forth the following recommendations. I use the criteria of basically safe and accessible. With my first recommendation being the soccer kicking wall.
Let me just preface this for people so about 3, maybe 4 years ago, council designated, I thought it was 4 walls originally, but maybe it was 3.
Yeah.
3 walls, public art walls, so anyone can go and paint them and paint over, they just use them as graffiti walls / public art walls. 2 of the locations that council originally said, yep, these are public art walls, have sort of actually have murals on them now that people have done, and so we want to add more sort of public art walls to the portfolio so people can go and not paint over the existing murals, but actually have another canvas, public canvas to go on. So just help explain, sorry.
So my first recommendation, I've got 4, but I've ranked them kind of in order of best to least favorable, I guess. The soccer kicking wall at Brennan Park, I have not gone out to the soccer association to ask yet about this, but it's a great surface.
It's a big canvas.
It's a big canvas. It's not in a dangerous area.
Yeah.
It's
I'd suggest
well lit.
have a conversation with the soccer association.
Yes, I
And I
will.
think Rotary helped put it up, or somebody helped fund it, so
Okay.
maybe just confirm with that.
Can I make a suggestion? You also talk to somebody in the youth center as well, to ask and see, do you think this would be a good location? Do you think people will use it?
Well, they're on my list because that's, my next recommendation is the skate park. It's already a surface that's being used for art.
That's at the youth center, yeah?
That's at the youth center, yeah. I also, I took a bunch of pictures, which I'll show some other time, of all the mural art at the youth center. It's quite,
I put one up as well.
yeah, yeah, right now. And the third being the skate park underneath the Boulevard Bridge. Again, it's already being used as that canvas. It's a little dark, it's a little out of the way, depending on who you want to be. So those were my 3. And
So just go back to the list. Does anyone see any problems with them? Yep.
Well, I do think we need to have one that's really in a public place.
And
Is that the one? That's really, because
well,
the
do
youth
you
center is
determine-
not, it's hidden away, right?
So some of our
Yeah.
challenges, we don't have a lot of public infrastructure that are, if you have a suggestion, make a suggestion.
Well, one of the things I wondered about, the south wall of the Cornerstone building, it would be wonderful to have a big mural from the top down to about 3/4 of the way
The
down.
Cornerstone building is not owned by the District of Squamish.
I understand that, but I did talk to Susan Chappelle, and she said, well, maybe we can work out a deal with that. I mean, I don't know, because it's an idea only, and then have the bottom section as a public art wall. Because it's downtown, it's not really in your face.
And because it's not public property, it's not public art wall. If we could have a conversation with Cornerstone, who owns the building. Yes,
If
Susan
is
doesn't
that
own the
okay,
building.
we can have it as a public art wall here, even though it's on a private location, is that a problem?
I'm not sure if it is or it isn't.
Could we look at that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's actually on private property, there's lots of walls. What we tasked Devin with was to go out and look at public property.
I'm just throwing out
Yeah.
ideas in the air.
Yeah. I mean, there's the blank wall on some of the buildings along Cleveland that are just big blank canvases for sure. That would be great.
But it would be really wonderful to put something together, you're talking about public art, and even though they're on private buildings.
So everyone's okay with those public ones, and we can obviously add to them at
Yeah.
other. But I think you do need to have conversations with the predominant stakeholders or users of the,
I agree,
okay.
I agree.
Okay, so we're good with that, and I guess at some point, would council have to sanction that, or could we just designate it?
I would think that it'd have to go to council to ratify, just because do I have to rescind the,
No, I think you just put a new list.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe, we'll put a motion for it before we wrap up here. Just want us to wrap up.
let's,
And so the BC Hydro boxes,
so the BC Hydro boxes have, as of end of day today, finished being installed. I've got pictures of 4 of the 6, because they were still being finished when I walked through. So on the left is Toby's Sea of Kayaks, on the right is Weave of
that looks great.
Life by Sierra Douglas, and then on the left, Laurel Terlesky. Yeah, that one.
Laurels, yeah.
Yeah, it turned out really well. And then Sierra Douglas's.
Awesome, and then the student one, that's still to
The
come?
student one was being installed when I would take the picture,
Oh.
so I
I'm
couldn't
keen
get it.
to see that one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that project is in terms of you guys, done and dusted. I will be reconciling the.
So just a update for new members, we did 6 hydro boxes, wrapped 6 hydro boxes. We had a competition. The committee adjudicated and chose 6 different ones, and now they're out there in the community. Yeah.
For our GIS map, do we actually have the artist and the information so we can?
Yeah, we make sure we get these in the GIS map. That'd
Meg?
I don't mind doing it.
be
but I
great.
just
You've
wonder
got
if
the
it's made.
pictures and the info.
Sure.
Okay, great. Awesome. Sorry to rush everyone through this. We're just over time. So I just wanted to go to Suecia for a minute. You wanted to talk about.
Yep, so we're doing our 10th annual Christmas dinner for the homeless and the single parents at Totem Hall. Not this weekend, but next weekend, this Saturday, December the 16th at 5 o'clock. So if any of you have any gently used clothing or blankets or anything that you want to donate to them, you can drop it off at Totem Hall on Friday or Saturday.
Next week? Not
Yeah,
this week.
not this week, next week. That'd be great.
And if you want a yummy turkey dinner,
Yeah.
everyone's welcome, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Mosaic, Meg.
I was having a couple of ideas again. People haven't heard all the ongoing kind of stuff.
Can I just preface this quickly?
Yeah.
The Mosaic is right outside Municipal Hall, right across in the park. It was a project that was done almost 20 years ago. A very community-driven project. Meg was a city councilor at the time and actually was a big part of it. And it was about a $100,000 project. It involved probably dozens of groups in the community, but probably
It
a
was
good
youth
100 or
driven
so.
as well. So
And it
the
was
youth center.
very much youth-driven, so, but it got kind of beat up in the last few winters and is seeing a lot of wear and tear and some upheaval of the cement and everything, so the committee's been deliberating about the degree to which we rehabilitate it or not, or how, and all that sort of thing. So, but the committee did determine that we saw a lot of community value and artistic value in it, and we're trying to figure out how to move forward, and we've allocated a bit of money and invested in some mosaicists to help us figure that out. Go ahead.
And what staff actually talked about was trying to take out the center chunk and continuing the sidewalk through. So it's kind of, well, how do we honor, the kind of spirit of the mosaic? And I think there's a couple of ideas. A rainbow is basically, it's in the shape of a rainbow. The outer circle is the community groups, which is the blue circle. The green circle is families. The yellow circle is government. The red circle is business, and the
Semicircle.
the semicircle, sorry. Basically, it's an arch, and if we actually think about architecture, there is a keystone that holds the sides together. My question, because staff wants to make straight lines, I totally get it, but if we could actually angle those lines a little bit so it looks like a keystone, then that would join the two wings of the mosaic. And the other thought I have is, could we actually put pigment in the concrete and have join the blue to the blue, even though
That's
it's
an
concrete,
interesting idea.
and the colors in bands, or could we paint it? My preference is doing it in pigment, but it doesn't really matter, and I don't know the cost. Because I think then, even though we're violating, changing the rainbow, we're really honoring the spirit of the rainbow. And I would really like to see
That's a really good
something like
idea.
that.
Yeah, so making something people walk across that our staff can clean up, but connecting through
The
some
sides
sort of
of it.
visual. So maybe, let's talk to Ops about that.
Yeah.
I do want to say thanks to Ops. The day after our meeting, they got out there, cleaned it up, put a rubberized mat over it. It looks way better.
Yeah.
It was done right away, so thanks back to Bob and his team for doing that and being really responsive. Good job.
I'll send them a note, yeah.
Great suggestion, Meg. So we'll take that back and see what the
What might
options
be
are.
doable,
And
what
if
costs
anyone
are.
has any ideas with artists in terms of, is it pigmenting concrete, is that the way to go, or?
So I just don't know enough about that. Or is it painting?
Anyway, we don't have to discuss it now, it is
We can
7
do that.
minutes after 9, but either way, I like that idea, it's a good idea. So just maybe quickly, we'll entertain, can you go back to your list of public walls?
Yes.
That, how about the committee recommend council
One-
sanction?
Yeah, one more I didn't talk about is number 4, so the concrete lock blocks on
Going
Highlands
up
Way
to
North.
Harrison North. That
So-
could be kind of fun,
Yeah, that's a very fun.
yeah.
It's
Uh,
great, that's great. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we recommend them all with a bit of a proviso that Devin follow up to ensure this works with stakeholders.
Yes,
And also further explore the possibility of art walls on private property. And maybe that could be something that we just take on and start going to different building owners and say, hey, would you be interested in that?
Or maybe there's a community artist who really wants to organize something like that.
Well, and I mean, Stan Matrachuk did do a mural a festival, start of a mural festival this year. They did 2 walls on private property, and so I think there's, we don't have to do everything in the community. I think there is sort of some inspiration out there in the community that's starting to take, because the city only owns so much, and that's sort of what the mandate of this committee is. Although I think being able to encourage and inspire others to keep going. So maybe someone want to move that we support staff's recommendation to council, that we continue just to make sure the stakeholders are on side with it, and moved by Meg, second by Catherine. Is that clear enough for you, Sarah?
Yep.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Awesome. I hesitate to ask if there's any more roundtable. Good, there's none. Or motion to terminate, moved by Meg, seconded by Matt. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries.